Spring of 1968. A man who had bled for his country walked through a studio gate in the Arizona desert with one thing on his mind. He was going to look a movie star in the eye and call him a coward. What he didn't know was that the next hour would rewrite the rest of both their lives. Stay with me, because this one is real and it doesn't go where you think it's going. The place was Red Rock Studios, just outside Tucson. The picture being shot that week was a rugged oilfield drama called Fire on the Rigs. Everywhere you looked there was motion, grips hauling cable, a boom mic swinging overhead, extras in coveralls waiting on their marks, the kind of controlled chaos that only exists on a working film set. At the center of it, in a canvas chair with his name stitched across the back, sat Coleman Reeves, 60 years old, broad-shouldered, silver at the temples, a face the whole country recognized from 100 posters. He'd quietly been fighting cancer for a year. Almost nobody on set knew that. He didn't talk about it. He just showed up and worked. Nobody at the gate that morning was expecting trouble, which is exactly why nobody was ready for it. A man came walking through the checkpoint like the fence wasn't there, late 40s. Lean in that specific way that comes from years of pain rather than discipline. Gray-brown hair cut close. He wore a faded olive field jacket, the kind with a corporal's stripe still visible if you looked hard enough. Underneath, a plain white shirt gone soft with age. His right leg didn't bend right. He leaned hard into a wooden cane with every other step, like the leg was something he was dragging along rather than walking on. The gate guard, a heavy-set man named Curtis, stepped into his path. "Sir, this is a closed set. You can't just. I need to see Reeves." "Sir," I said, "I need to see Reeves." He didn't stop moving. Curtis reached for the radio clipped to his belt, took one real look at the man, the cane, the leg, the jacket, the stripe, and let his hand fall back to his side without a word. 50 people on that set went quiet inside about 4 seconds. Cameras stopped rolling. Crew members turned. The director froze behind the viewfinder with his hand half raised, like he wanted to call for security but couldn't quite finish the motion. Reeves heard the commotion before he saw the man. He set his coffee down on the arm of his chair and stood up slow, the way big men do when they don't want to look like they're bracing for something. He waited. The stranger closed the distance. Cane, step. Cane, step, 20 paces, 10. He stopped close enough that Reeves could see the muscle working in his jaw. He raised one hand and pointed a finger square at Reeves' chest. "You, Reeves, didn't move. You play soldiers for a living. You play the man who takes the hill." You wear the uniform, you take the salute at the end of the reel, everybody in the theater cries, and you go home to a mansion. His voice was shaking, but it wasn't fear shaking it. It was something that had been sitting in him for over 2 decades, finally finding a door. And you never served a single day. Somewhere off camera, an assistant director's hand hovered over a walkie-talkie and never pressed the button. You stayed home and made pictures while men I served with were dying 8,000 miles away. I watched Terrence Boyle take a round through the neck on a beach that doesn't even have a name most people can spell. I watched a boy no older than 19 bleed out in a foxhole because the corpsman couldn't reach him in time. And you, his voice cracked wide open. You put on their uniform for a camera. You got paid for it. You got applause for it. He was almost shouting now, and the whole crew had gone completely still, the kind of stillness you only get once or twice in a career, if you're unlucky enough, or lucky enough to witness it. I drove 380 miles from Phoenix to say this to your face. You're a fake, Reeves. You've built an entire career pretending to be something braver men actually were. And they're in the ground and you're in a director's chair. If you're watching this and you've ever had something eating at you for 20 years that nobody would let you say out loud, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I want to know how far a story like this actually travels. The silence that followed was the loudest silence that set had ever heard. Nobody moved. The director's raised hand just hung there, forgotten. Reeves stood with his coffee cooling 6 feet away, and for a long moment he said nothing at all. He looked the man over, really looked. The cane, the stiff leg turned slightly outward, the faded stripe on a sleeve gone thin at the elbow. He looked into the man's eyes. Then he said one word, "Come." The man blinked. "What?" "Come with me, away from all this." Reeves turned and started walking slow and unhurried toward a row of trailers parked under a stand of mesquite 50 yards off. He didn't check to see if the man followed. He walked like someone who trusted that he would. The anger the veteran had carried 380 miles suddenly had nowhere left to land. He stood there a second, staring at the wide back moving away from him. Then, almost against his own will, he started after him. Cane, step, cane, step. Reeves reached the last trailer in the row, his own, and opened the door. He held it for the other man and waited while he climbed the 2 metal steps on his own terms, refusing the offered hand. Once they were both inside, Reeves shut the door, and the noise of the whole production disappeared behind him. It was a small space, a bunk, a little writing desk, 2 mismatched chairs, a hot plate with a dented coffee pot. Reeves gestured to a canvas folding stool. "Sit down, Marine." The man sat. He propped his cane against the wall like it was something he was setting down for the first time in years. Reeves poured 2 cups of black coffee, handed one over, and lowered himself into the chair across from him. He set his own cup on the desk and looked at the floor for a long moment before he spoke. "You're right." The veteran blinked. "What? You're right? I never served?" Nothing but the sound of the coffee pot ticking as it cooled. "I tried 3 separate times in 42, what turned down every time. Bad shoulder from college ball, a busted eardrum from a stunt gone wrong, and I was 34 with 3 kids at home. The studio had me classified unfit before I even finished the paperwork the 3rd time. They told me I was doing more for the war effort selling tickets than I would carrying a rifle. I believed them. Or maybe I just wanted to believe them, because it let me stay home." He took a slow sip. "I made picture after picture playing men who did what I never did. I put on the uniform. I took the salute at the end of the reel, and then I went home to a warm bed in California, while men like you were sleeping in mud 8,000 miles from anywhere. I have carried that for 26 years. I will carry it until the day I die. There is no fixing it. There is no apology big enough to hand you that would make it either. So I'm not going to try to apologize to you." The veteran was staring at him now, and the anger in his face was still there, but it had lost its shape completely. It didn't know what to hold on to anymore. "What I have tried to do," Reeves went on, quieter now, "every single time I play a man like you, is get it right. I talk to the men who were actually there. I read whatever reports I can get my hands on. I try to get the walk right, the weapon right, the way a man talks when he's scared and doesn't want anyone to see it. I can't undo what I didn't do, but I can make sure the country doesn't forget what you did. That's the only thing I've found to do with this guilt in 26 years. Maybe it's not enough, it's what I have." He looked up and met the man's eyes directly. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not even asking you to like my pictures. I'm telling you you're right, and I'm telling you I've spent half my life trying to be useful to men like you, because I can't be one of you." The trailer stayed silent a long moment. The veteran looked down into his coffee. His hand had started to tremble, and it wasn't anger doing it now. "You really tried 3 times. 3 times. Another silence, longer than the first. "I caught shrapnel on a beach in the Pacific in February of 45, the man said finally. Same day, some other units were raising a flag on a hill a few hundred yards north of where I was pinned down in a draw. I wasn't there for that part. I was watching a mortar round land 12 feet from my position. It killed 2 men beside me outright, tore through my leg. Doctors saved the leg. They couldn't save the way I walk on it." He shook his head slowly. "Took 2 days to get me back to a hospital ship. I was 24, had a wife waiting at home. She stayed with me 2 years after I got back, and then she left, and I don't blame her one bit. I wasn't the man she married anymore." Reeves didn't say anything. He just listened. "I've spent 23 years angry at the war, at my leg, at my wife for leaving, at myself for not being able to make her stay. And every single time one of your war pictures comes on the television, I get angry all over again, because nobody in it walks like me. Nobody in it loses their wife 2 years later. Everybody in your pictures comes home and gets a parade." He looked up. "That's why I drove out here today." Reeves nodded slowly, like something had just clicked into place for him. "What if I could change that?" "Change what?" "Stay on this set. We've got 3 more weeks on this picture, and it's not a war story, but the next one is. We start shooting a picture called The Iron Beret in August, down in Georgia. I want you on it. I want you standing behind that camera every single day. I want you telling me when I get it wrong, how the men actually carried themselves, how they actually talked, how they handled being scared without ever showing it. I want a real Marine on this picture, not an actor playing one." The veteran just stared at him. "Why would you do that?" "Because I should have done it a long time ago." Reeves held his gaze. "Because I owe it to you and every man like you. Because every war picture I've ever made, I've been guessing at things I had no business guessing at. And you drove 380 miles to tell me I'm a fake, and you're not entirely wrong. The only honest thing I can do about that is let you make me a little less of one." The veteran didn't answer right away. His eyes filled, and this time he didn't bother wiping them away. "I don't know the first thing about making movies. You don't need to. You know what it is to be a Marine. That's the only thing I need." A long silence passed between them. Then the veteran put out his right hand. Reeves took it. "Name's Walt Draeger, Corporal, United States Marine Corps, Coleman Reeves." "Good to know you, Marine." For the next 3 weeks, Walt stayed in a small motel in Tucson, paid for by Reeves out of his own pocket. Reeves put him on payroll as a technical consultant, $300 a week, the same rate the studio paid its senior advisors. Walt tried to turn the money down. Reeves told him it wasn't charity, it was a job, and he needed Walt to take it seriously, because he was going to be relying on it. Every morning at 7, Walt was on set in a folding chair beside Reeves, a small notebook in his lap. Between takes, the two of them sat together and Walt told him everything that had been wrong for 20 years. The way a man grips a rifle when his hands are shaking. The way a tired man's shoulders drop different from a scared man's. The way a sergeant gives an order without ever raising his voice. Reeves listened. He took notes. He got it wrong the first few tries. He kept trying. By the second week, people on set had noticed something had changed in him. He was quieter, slower. He checked with Walt before every setup now. "That look right to you, Marine?" Walt would nod or shake his head, and Reeves would adjust the whole shot around the answer. The director, who'd worked with Reeves for over a decade, said afterward he'd never once seen the man defer to anybody on a set the way he deferred to Walt Draeger. 60 years old, a career full of statues on his mantle, and he was taking notes like a first-year student. Ever had someone finally sit down and actually listen to the thing you'd been carrying alone for 20 years? It rearranges something in you. Both of them, apparently. That August, they flew out to Georgia for the Iron Beret. Walt stayed the full 8 weeks. When the credits rolled, there was a line nobody expected. Technical Advisor, CPL, Walter Draeger, USMC. It was the first time in 23 years his rank and his service had appeared anywhere in public. He cried the first time he saw it on the screen. The picture did solid business. Critics were split down the middle, the way they always are. Veterans loved it. Reeves started getting letters, hundreds of them, from men who'd served, thanking him for finally getting the small things right. He handed every one of them to Walt. "These are yours," he told him. Walt kept every single letter for the rest of his life. The two men stayed in touch for 11 more years. Walt eventually settled outside Phoenix. Reeves called every few months, sent a card every Christmas and every December without fail, a check for $1,000 with a short note attached. For the work, he always wrote, though both of them knew it was for something bigger than that. Walt never cashed a single one for himself. He quietly funneled every check into a scholarship fund at his local veterans post for the children of disabled servicemen. He never told a soul, not even his second wife, a warm woman named Helen, who married him in 1971. In the summer of 1979, Coleman Reeves passed away. Cancer finally caught up with him. The whole country mourned him for weeks. Walt watched the coverage alone on a small television, Helen beside him. She said later it was the only time in 8 years of marriage she ever saw him cry. 3 weeks after the funeral, Walt sat down at his kitchen table with a sheet of plain stationery and wrote a letter to the Reeves family, whose address he only knew because of 11 years of Christmas cards. He told them their father had saved his life without ever knowing that's what he was doing, that a wounded, furious man had walked onto his set to call him a fraud, and instead of throwing him off the property, he'd listened, told him the truth, and handed him back something no metal could replace. Walt wrote that he had nothing that could possibly repay that, so he was sending the only thing of value he had left. Inside the package, wrapped in plain brown paper, were his Purple Heart and his Bronze Star. The letter closed with a single line, "Tell his children their father was a good man." The package reached the Reeves estate a little over a week later. Reeves' son opened it, read the letter twice, and called his sister. They sat at their father's old kitchen table and read it together in silence. They kept the medals in a small wooden box on the mantel of his study. They never sold them, never spoke of them publicly, never told a soul the story behind them. Walt Draeger died in 2003. A heart attack, 83 years old. Going through his desk, his son found a sealed envelope marked simply, "For Michael, after I'm gone." Inside was a copy of the 1979 letter, along with a note in his father's handwriting explaining, for the first time, where the medals had gone and why, and asking that someday, if his grandchildren wanted to see them, they write to the Reeves family and ask. Michael took the letter to a local paper. It ran on the front page. Word spread. The Reeves children, now well into their 60s, read the story and reached out. They invited Michael to their father's old home, brought him into the study, and showed him the medals sitting exactly where they'd sat for over 20 years. When Michael asked what they wanted to do with them, Reeves' daughter thought about it for a long moment and said they belonged somewhere everyone could see them. Right beside one of her father's old costumes, so the whole story would be told together, not just half of it. In 2006, a small museum dedicated to the golden age of the Western film opened a permanent exhibit. Under a single pane of glass sit a worn olive field jacket with a faded corporal stripe, a purple heart, a bronze star, and a wooden cane carried for over 50 years, beside a plain work shirt from an oil field picture and a black and white photograph of two men on a film set in 1968, both looking at the camera with the same quiet, unguarded smile. A small plaque beneath the case reads, "He never fought in the war. He spent the rest of his life making sure the country never forgot the men who did." That exhibit has drawn hundreds of thousands of visitors since it opened. Most of them walk in having no idea who the man with the cane was. None of them leave that way. Here's the thing about guilt nobody tells you. Most people carry it for the rest of their lives and never once find a place to set it down. They build a career on top of it, a family on top of it, a whole life stacked over the thing they never did, and none of that changes what waits for them the second the lights go out at night. One man carried his for 26 years before a wounded stranger drove almost 400 miles to make him face it. He could have called security. He could have argued. He could have simply walked away and let the moment pass. Instead, he opened a door and told the truth and handed over the one thing he actually had to offer, the chance to be made a little more honest. And the other man had carried his own anger for 23 years. He could have stayed home and let it keep eating at him quietly for the rest of his life. Instead, he made the drive, said the thing out loud, and let himself actually be heard, and then let himself accept what was offered in return. Two broken men, broken in completely different ways, walked into a trailer on an ordinary Tuesday, and neither one of them walked back out unchanged. That's the whole story right there. Not a movie star and a war hero, just two men who finally listened to each other. If this one landed with you, do something with it, send it to a veteran you know, or to anyone carrying something they don't think anybody's willing to hear. And if you want more stories like this one, from the men who built the legends and the men who lived the truth behind them, hit follow, because there are plenty more where this came from, and they don't build men like either one of these anymore.